according to scientificamerica.com, in 2019 there was approximately 36.8 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide released into the Earth's atmosphere. This large amount of greenhouse gases has heavily contributed to that of global warming, which has detrimental impacts on not only our environment but our everyday life. If we as humans want to minimize these detrimental effects that global warming has and will continue to have on us throughout the coming years, we need to radically change the way in which we as a society produce energy. Now, the first way that global warming has had an impact on our environment and our lives is through that of forest fires. Already this year, we have seen the worst forest fire season for California in recorded history. And in fact, according to C2ES.org, the amount of large fires have doubled since the year 1985. Now, the main contribution to these large forest fires is that of drought. The reason that drought so heavily impacts that of forest fires is because it increases the amount of forest fuels. Forest fuels are basically any dead shrub or tree that heavily contributes to the fueling of the fire. So it's what's burned when the forest fire is actually burning. Now, another thing that a lot of people don't talk about is the mountain pine beetle. The mountain pine beetle is an indigenous beetle in the western United States, but mainly Mexico, that loves warmer temperatures. So as these warm temperatures increase, their populations will increase. And what this will do is that these mountain pine beetles are like termites down here, is that they kill trees. So as these mountain pine beetle populations grow, they will continue to kill more trees, which will then contribute to more forest fuels within the area. Now, another way that global warming has began to impact our environment is through that of hurricanes. As being a member of the Gulf Coast, I'm no stranger to hurricanes, and I think many of us are, as we have already seen 2 hurricanes hit Louisiana this school year. Now, what climate change deniers will tell you is that there has been no increase in the amount of hurricanes since we started keeping track, and that is true. But what they don't tell you about that is that we've only been keeping track of hurricanes since 1985. So there's actually no reliable data about hurricanes past that. But according to Yale Climate Connections, we have seen a substantial regional and global increase in the amount of Category 4 and the amount of Category 5 hurricanes. And what's important to understand about this is that a hurricane that has a 155 mile per hour winds has 256 times the damage potential of that of a hurricane that has 75 mile per hour winds. As well as our mean global temperature increases, these hurricanes will be able to hold more moisture, since warmer air is able to hold more moisture, which will contribute to more flooding throughout the whole Gulf Coast and anywhere that is hit by a hurricane. Now, the next way that global warming has began to impact our environment is through that of the melting of the polar ice caps. Now, the polar ice caps actually have a feedback mechanism that helps keep the world cool due to the fact that ice has a low albedo rate. Since the ice is white, it helps reflect a lot of the heat energy that hits it and reflects it back up into the atmosphere. Now as these glaciers begin to melt, we will see an increase in the sea level, which will then flood and displace millions and millions of people. These people will then be without homes, jobs, they won't know people around them. Many of them will have to move all the way across the country. They will lose family members, and they will ultimately lose out a lot of money, because as they lose their homes, no one's gonna buy their homes or anything that they own that's been flooded. As well as these melted glaciers will also change the salinity composition of the oceans globally. So then this will alter the wind patterns and oceanic currents, which will, as we will see in this slide, will impact food security. The reason for this is that the Gulf Stream brings warm air up to Europe. And if you look at Europe, Europe lies on the same latitude of that as Canada, but they have 2 drastically different climates, and this is due to the Gulf Stream bringing warm air up. What this warm air enables Europeans to do is it enables them to grow crops like wheat. But if this Gulf Stream were to shift southward, like they think it will, if we continue to see the salinity composition of the ocean change, it will then make Europe too cold to grow wheat. And then according to PSR.org, as the global mean temperature increases, if it were to increase just 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit, we will see a 10% drop off in the crop yield. And also, according to the UN, climate change is also already the leading cause of hunger worldwide. Now, some solutions for global warming would be to switch to renewable or green sources of energy. Now, while nuclear is not a renewable source of energy, it is one of the most efficient energy sources we have now, and it is actually one of the safest. I know a lot of people, when they think of nuclear, they think of meltdown and explosions like either Chernobyl or Fukushima, but it's actually quite safe. Actually, nuclear power has only accounted for 1,000 deaths since its inception, but coal power accounts for 800,000 deaths annually. And there has been recently massive amounts of innovation within this field, and in fact that now most the new nuclear reactors that they're designing can run off of depleted uranium. So that means the byproducts of the reactors that we are using now. And in Kentucky currently they have a nuclear waste facility that is actually storing enough depleted uranium to power the whole of the United States for 125 years. Now another good green and renewable resource that we could switch to is solar. The advantages of solar is that it's relatively easy to install. For instance, like everyone could put it on their house, and that you can actually sell the excess energy that you have. So obviously you can imagine that that would be a pro for solar. Now the last one I'm going to go over is wind. Wind actually, according to Forbes, produces double the amount of jobs per $1 million spent as opposed to the fossil fuel industry. So that means as we begin to switch more to wind production, we'll have more jobs in the wind production field, which will give a lot of people money and will be a huge boost to the economy. Now it's important to understand that global warming is a global problem. That means that it isn't just one nation or one person's responsibility to help stop this. We all have to work together, whether that's getting out and voting and legislation to go and switch to green practices that you agree with, or it's just something as simple as turning out the light when you leave the room. We all have to work together to solve this problem, and it's not just going to take one person, it's going to take all of us. Well, that's been my speech on global warming. I hope you enjoyed.